Rapport family? We are back with another great edition of Building Rapport. We're talking Auburn Tigers here, and joining me is a very special guest, somebody I've been wanting to get on for a very long time. Brandon Marcello with 247 and CBS Sports joins us to talk Hugh Freeze and Auburn football. Let me bring him in here. Brandon, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm always happy to talk Auburn, man.
Let's jump right in here, Brandon. Auburn is on fire on the recruiting trail right now. They've got the 5th ranked class. If you look at 247 or Rivals, I think On3 has them maybe as the 6th rated class. We're going to go with 247 here. What do you think about what Hugh Freeze is doing on the recruiting trail right now? And what does that mean for Auburn in the near future?
Yeah, I think that they're really capitalizing on Hugh Freeze's past in a lot of ways and what he was able to do to Ole Miss and selling that future. I'm going to bring in young guys. You're going to come in here and I'm going to develop you. Year 2, year 3, we're going to have something really special here. That's what he's been able to sell to them. He said, look what I did at Ole Miss when I did that. I brought in 5 4-star guys and I did that. And it's been very clear that's been his vision since he got there. I mean, I sat down with him a little over a year ago now, and he kind of laid it all out there about what he kind of foresees for everything there. And that in this era of where everybody wants everything now because of the transfer portal, he's managed to get the administration there at Auburn to really buy in to give me a few years here to build it the way I want. And then we'll pepper it in with some transfer portal additions, some big time guys when we need to. But I'm going to be a developer. I want to develop high school kids and keep them on campus because he believes, and it's proven true across the country here early in this portal era, the teams that are championship teams, contenders, are the ones that are bringing the high school kids in, keeping them there, developing them. They're not necessarily going out there and winning with a bunch of transfers, 3 or 4 guys on offense. Or you go, well, they weren't here last year. Well, look at Georgia and what they've been able to do. I would even argue to a certain extent what Oregon's doing right now, even though we haven't seen them in the championship picture, but I think we're going to very soon because of the way they've been recruiting in the high school ranks. I mean, every starter for Oregon this year on defense is a blue chip, 4 or 5-star guy,
Right.
And they're all developed guys. That hasn't been the case ever at Oregon. So anyway, I say that to say this. I think Hugh Freeze has a vision. Auburn's allowing and giving him that leeway, that runway to utilize it, and they're really capitalizing off of the success of the first recruiting class, second recruiting class, going into 25 and 26. But I will say this, if Auburn for some reason, and I don't believe this is going to happen, if Auburn for some reason struggles this year on the field, I think the recruiting class could take some hits.
Yeah.
Maybe it would fall out of the top 5, maybe just be a top 10 class. But man, if they were to somehow win 9 games or even 10 games somehow, we're talking about them maybe getting in on late and maybe flipping some other kids that we're not even talking about today to where they might be a top 3, top 2 class potentially.
Yeah.
So either way, Auburn's killing it on the recruiting trail, and they're going to be in the top 10 at the end of everything. But if they can just kind of, get back to a bowl game this year, they will definitely stay in the top 5. But if they do better than that, watch out because the way they're building this thing, they are just stockpiling talent and developing those guys. And if they can keep them on campus, which they've been able to do for the most part, look out year 3, year 4 for Hugh Freeze.
Vegas set the over-under at 7.5. So 8 games would be, I guess, overachieving. Like you said, anything after 8 would be extra credit. 7 might be acceptable, but not exactly where you want to be. Projecting forward, though, this is a different SEC. Texas and Oklahoma have joined the conference. Auburn plays Oklahoma their 5th game of the season. And sticking with the theme of what they need to accomplish this season, what, in your mind, is the most likely scenario for Auburn football here? I talked to Paul Feinbaum over at ESPN about the significance of that Oklahoma game, and whoever wins that has a chance to really propel their season forward. What do you see in the schedule for Auburn?
Auburn's schedule, I'm looking at it now to refresh myself. It's very favorable for them, obviously opening the year with 5 straight home games. But you mentioned the Oklahoma game. That's huge, obviously. It's OU's first SEC road game ever. And it also comes, I believe, the week after they host Tennessee for their SEC opener, which is going to be an absolute madhouse there in Norman. I'm going to that game to go cover it because I can't wait. But there's a lot of storylines there. Josh Heupel returning to his alma mater as the head coach of Tennessee, now back at OU. OU and him had a big falling out about a decade ago. He kind of got fired there when he was the OC and quarterbacks coach. He hasn't been back since. It's been a very weird marriage. There's going to be a lot of distractions stuff going on. And OU preparing for that big first SEC test, they're going to put a lot into that. How the heck are they going to respond week to week in the SEC, let alone doing that big game against a high-flying offense, and then you got to go on the road into an environment you've never been in, and it's your SEC road opener? That is very favorable for Auburn. I could see Auburn being 5-0 going into Georgia, with that Georgia game being the one where everybody goes, okay, is Auburn back? Is Auburn a top 10 team this year? Even so, the schedule outside that Georgia game, it's pretty good. I mean, you get A&M at home. I think A&M's going to be very good this season. Whenever Connor Wigman is healthy and they've got him out there at quarterback, A&M, they've been good. And I'm telling you, Mike Elko is going to get that defense turned around. He's got some good pieces there. But for Auburn, absolutely. I don't bet, but I would say Auburn's an 8-win team this year. I would bet the over on that, most definitely. I love the schedule.
A lot of us took the over last year and got burned by loss to New Mexico State in 4th and 31 at Alabama. I know Hugh Freeze will be looking to avoid those moments this year. But sticking with the theme of how they continue to build on what they did last year. So you like 8 wins, and we know that NIL is a real big part of this. Auburn has maybe shown a stronger commitment to this coach to put some dollars behind this recruiting class. What do you see there as the strategy? Peyton Thorne has gone after this year. There are rumors that Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame QB commit, might flip to Auburn. What does Auburn do at quarterback and with NIL if they take a quarterback in the 2025 cycle as high profile as Deuce Knight? Do they still go to the portal for a QB here and spend the NIL dollars? What we're hearing is you need $1 million to get a serviceable guy in the portal right now.
At quarterback, definitely you do. I'll say this. I think you just got to look back to this past offseason in the transfer portal. Auburn had an opportunity to go after a Malik Murphy, the high-profile Texas backup quarterback who everybody was like, we'd love to have him. And he ended up going to Duke, but Auburn didn't really move or even go after him. And that aligns with what was being told to me by people around Hugh Freeze and Hugh Freeze himself a year ago, that the plan is that they're kind of going about this where we're going to go focus wholeheartedly mostly on high school recruiting these first couple of years. And my understanding from talking to people that are familiar with the NIL program and everything around there is that we're not going to necessarily reward players right away up front by paying them big paydays, including high school kids and transfer kids. We're waiting for them to stay in the program, develop, and then not necessarily on the back end, but by year 2, year 3, when they're in the system and they're developing and they're ready to be the starter or be a star, that's when we're going to give them that quote-unquote big-time NIL money. Same with transfers. The reason why Auburn's not going after an big-time quarterback is because, one, they brought in Peyton Thorne and told him, you're our guy unless one of the freshmen we're bringing in beats you, which just probably wasn't going to happen. You're going to be our guy. So Auburn stood pat, did not go after really any transfer quarterbacks, as you guys know. And this upcoming year, though, not just at quarterback, but at some other spots, Auburn, I think, is going to open the coffers a little bit based off what I've been told. And then if there is a big-time quarterback out there that they believe is better than a Walker White or whoever is at quarterback there they feel good with, they will go after them this cycle. Who knows who that'll be? You never know who's going to enter the portal there. You had a Cam Ward last year, obviously, a big-time name like that. I think if something like that were to happen, Auburn would be probably one of the top 2 or 3 programs out there to be keeping an eye on about making big splashes in the portal this year. Also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
But yeah, I was just going to say, along those lines, with high school recruiting, I kept being told by some people not tied to Auburn, but people in the industry who deal with recruiting every single day, that Auburn is looking, and the rumors are they're looking to make some big splashes late in the cycle in the state of Georgia and to watch out in the state of Georgia. So I don't follow recruiting very much. That's just kind of not my job and my purview anymore. But when I talk to coaches every day and texting with them and everything, this is stuff that's been coming up the last few months about they're really focusing efforts on this or that, and watch out in Georgia here late in the process. I don't know if there's any big time guys there that they could flip or not, but it's interesting that that's kind of the murmurs going on behind the scenes. But when it comes to that NIL program, there's reasons why Auburn wasn't necessarily spending big bucks early. It's been part of the plan. And I know it's kind of hard for people to sit there and think, well, that doesn't make sense. If you want a guy, just go get him, make him better. Well, Hugh Freeze has sold Auburn on a plan where we're not necessarily going to be in contention until year 3 or year 4. I'm just going to tell you that up front. I'm not going to go into this and try to do a quick rebuild, do very well my second year, and then by year 3, I'm like, oh crap, I got to go get 17 transfers, and 15 of them have to be starters.
Yeah, right.
That's not what he wants. How he wants to build this right now. So got Auburn to buy into that. They're saving up money, but they're building up the coffers, so to speak. So I'm telling you, there's reasons why the recruiting's doing so well right now. But look out this upcoming offseason that if they need a big-time transfer or two, they're going to, I think, based off what I've been told, they're going to be willing to spend the money and go do that. And it might very well be a quarterback we're not even thinking of right now in the transfer portal.
Well, they're certainly doing very well at home in state right now, Brandon. 8 out of the top 10 recruits in the state of Alabama have committed to Auburn. There's some whispers that they may be able to flip one or both of the last 2 who are both committed to Ohio State. So Hugh Freeze is looking to continue to build the way you said for the future, slowly but surely, rather than the flash in the pan. I heard somebody say the last of the last 4 coaches minus Harsin, they've been able to do something incredible by year 2. I think Tommy Tuberville made the SEC championship in year 2. Gene Chizik won a whole national title in year 2. Gus made the national title game in year 1, and Harsin unceremoniously was dismissed in year 2. But Hugh Freeze looking by year 3 or 4 to put something special on the field. Fantastic discussion, Brandon.
I think it was a good point there when you not a good point, but I like the I think it's a good nickname for him, minus Harsin. Just call it the minus Harsin era. What a bad time that was. But you're right. When you talk about the state of Alabama and recruiting there, this is the best Auburn's done since maybe Tuberville in the state of Alabama.
Yeah,
just when we talk about the top 10 guys. And what this is legitimately the perfect time to be the head coach at Auburn. You just had Nick Saban retire. I mean, I'm sure Hugh Freeze wouldn't say it or whatever, but my goodness, talk about just a huge gift delivered to him. Like, oh, I'm early in my tenure. I not only can stick to my plan, but now I can even go further into it. With Nick Saban gone, I can capitalize that on the recruiting trail. I mean, it's always been one of those things where whoever's the coach at Auburn when Nick Saban retires, they're set up to make a run, similar to what Tuberville did against Alabama back in the early 2000s, mid-2000s. It's going to be fascinating to watch how Hugh Freeze tries to capitalize on this.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly where I want to end. Nick Saban that exited college football this past offseason, he said to the media, look, I feel like my messaging is no longer resonating with recruits, meaning guys want to talk more about money than playing opportunity. His wife kind of come out and said the same thing too. All these guys want to talk about his money. So he retired. This is a new day and age. Now, Alabama still has the 2nd ranked recruiting class, but DeBoer is not making inroads with kids in state. I personally don't think that's sustainable long term. I think to win down south, you got to win with kids from down south. But this Iron Bowl, how important is this Iron Bowl for Hugh Freeze or Kalen DeBoer, right? Like, if Hugh Freeze can go into Tuscaloosa and get the first win there since 2010, and even that one, Brendan, was the greatest comeback in Auburn football history. Like, can he can really put a stranglehold, I think, on recruiting for the next cycle with a win there in the Iron Bowl, can't he?
Oh, absolutely. And then I think that Iron Bowl is much more important for Kalen DeBoer than it is Hugh Freeze.
For Hugh Freeze, yeah.
Just long term. Because if you're the Alabama coach and your first Iron Bowl is a loss and it's in Tuscaloosa, and as you mentioned, it's the first loss in Tuscaloosa in 14 years, when all the recruits that you're recruiting right now were 3 years old or 2 years old or 4 years old, that's not a good look. And boy, Hugh Freeze and co will capitalize on that on the recruiting trail and selling that to them. But yeah, Kalen DeBoer wins that game for Alabama. It's expected, right? You lose that game, it's devastating. It's the end of the world for a lot of people there, and it'll have your own fans at Alabama, which haven't done in more than a decade, saying, do we have the right coach? Does this guy know what he's doing? I told you this guy who's never coached south of the Mason-Dixon line is
Yeah.
not. I mean, that you're going to have all that infighting going on, and Auburn's going to be sitting on the outside looking in, going, "This is the time to capitalize." But as you mentioned, Hugh Freeze has already been capitalizing in the state, and you're exactly right. Every coach, they have like a 4-hour or 5-hour circle around their school, right, that they want to recruit and recruit hard. Bama's doing that to a certain extent, but as good as they've been, like you said, number 2 recruiting class right now. But what's happening inside the state, I think, matters. And then that stuff can start bubbling over across state borders and everything, especially depending on how things go on the field. I think this is maybe one of the more critical years as far as just the stature of Alabama-Auburn when it comes to how the future will be judged based off what happens on the field this year for both programs. I mean,
Yeah.
if Alabama wins 9 games, that's very much a disappointment. Auburn wins 9 games this year, we're on track, and then watch out going into next season, and you can sell down the recruiting trail. Alabama, not so much. It's very much advantage Auburn right now in that rivalry series.
That's going to get a lot of people stirred up on social media. I can tell you that from recent experience. But I want to thank you for joining me today. I think that you're right. This is probably more important for DeBoer than it is for Freeze, because people can stomach one more Iron Bowl loss in Tuscaloosa, but opening your tenure at Alabama with an Iron Bowl loss, something that hasn't happened in 14 years, may start to shift that narrative even more towards Auburn's side. One thing I do know, Brandon, about covering college football for the time that we have is that recruits talk.
Oh, yeah.
They talk. And high-profile guys want to play with other high-profile guys. So when a guy is not choosing Alabama, those guys want to know why. And so we'll see what that narrative pans out to be. Brandon, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you, where they can read your stuff.
Yeah, CBSSports.com, 247sports.com. And I'm on all the socials at bmarcello and on Instagram and TikTok. I don't dance on TikTok, but I'm on TikTok at Brandon Marcello as well.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of Building Rapport with my guy, Brandon Marcello from CBS Sports and 247. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.